Welcome to another episode of Reseller Evolution. I'm Scott.
And I'm Jamie.
And Jamie is here again. We got Jamie instead of Carl. Carl should be back next week. I think he's, I should actually have texted him. I think he's home. I think he got home yesterday, but he was kind of just in that position where he's going to be tired. So,
yeah.
And so I should text him and see how things are going. But Jamie, thanks so much. Thanks for coming in. This is 2 in a row here. So
I should
want to give a little shout out to you do a YouTube video and different things. And you want to
I should just say that I am Carl, and then we could just pretend like, that nothing was different. But I'm
just going to interrupt you real quickly here. The people would know if you started talking about, I got to a yard sale and I cleaned up, then they're going to say that's an imposter.
Right. Exactly.
So Carl would be like, oh, I did it again. Someone chased me away and I bought something for $5 and they chased me to my car and made me pay $20.
Yeah. Oh, wasn't there an imposter on your show on Sunday night? Wasn't there was it something like
that was two Sundays ago. And I think someone was pretending they were Carl. Or it was Carl pretending he's someone else. I don't know.
We'll have to get to the bottom of that when Carl gets back.
Well, I was kind of, and this is the live show every Sunday on Scott Sells Stuff. So I was kind of thinking that like we should let it go. But apparently Adam, and I didn't realize this today after the show. I just thought when I called him out, they had stopped. And I guess he blocked them.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is, okay, so who are you, Jamie?
Yeah, so I'm Jamie. I've got a YouTube channel called Thrift on Fire. I also have a podcast with my buddy John called A to Z Reseller Podcast. And I like to jump on Scott's show on Sunday night once in a while and visit with these guys. And I like reselling. I've been doing it full time now for just over a year. I've been doing it a lot longer, but full time's been the last year, and it's been going really great.
Nice. And I've been watching some of your videos there where you do what sold, and you're selling quite a bit. You're doing pretty good, right? So
I've been running sales and really trying to push stuff out recently. I had a big slowdown on eBay, and you've always got to like adapt and figure out how to sell your own stuff. And I think sometimes instead of always just worried about picking up new things, selling the stuff you already have is obviously just as important as picking up new stuff.
I just got to sell.
Yeah. I heard that.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing is, what I like too is you don't just do eBay. You're doing, you do a variety of different platforms.
Yeah. I like to dabble in Poshmark Canada, Poshmark US, Depop. I like to sell local on Facebook Marketplace. I do eBay.ca and .com. So I have 2 different eBay accounts. I have done Amazon. I do not like selling on Amazon whatsoever. And I was on Etsy and enjoyed selling on Etsy until they gave me a push out the door. So I've been kicked off Etsy. So that's another place I did sell that was fairly successful. But yeah, I'm always open to selling in new places and locally in an antique booth as well, I guess.
Okay, well, I'm going to touch on Etsy, but just before, for any new listeners here, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a topic today on clothing, and we're going to, because that's what Jamie's. I would say that's your primary thing is clothing and shoes.
I think so. It's funny because I never really think about that about myself, but I get told that quite often. So, and when I think about it, I do sell a lot of clothing and a lot of shoes. So it makes sense. I just, in my own mind, I like to think that I sell a little bit of everything, but at the end of the day, I do sell a lot of shoes and a lot of clothing.
Okay. So that's perfect. Cause I don't really sell a lot of that at all. I have sold a piece here and there. So I'm really looking forward to quizzing you and seeing what I need to do. No, but at least understand the reselling of the clothing world. Now I'm going to jump back to Etsy a little bit here. Here's a comment. I got a item taken away. they had taken it down, but I can't find what item it is. They just said it. If I want to look at it, if I want to know what item it is, I have to go into my inactive, I think it was. So I go to my inactive, and everything that's in there is what I've taken down because I sold it on eBay because I
Okay.
had cross listed all the stuff. So I don't really know what they took down. You can't call them. I'm not going to sit here and play email tag. You know what I mean? Because that's just stupid. So I'm kind of disappointed on Etsy, and it's really a shame because in the last, I've been listed on Etsy probably since January. Um, I'm kind of pulling away from it. However, in the last, I honestly, this whole month, like I've did almost $1,000 just on Etsy, and I haven't listed anything.
Wow.
Right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I sold a little miniature for $300. I sold a clock for 125. It went out this morning. Just some pretty big sales, right? There was something else I sold there for, um, I think it was 185. I'll remember what it is, but right, it went out yesterday or the day before. Um, but anyways, you can get some big dollars for per item compared to other platforms, but they're so Mickey Mouse in the way that they treat their sellers. And I've also went on and I heard some people talk about it on YouTube, and a lot of people are quitting Etsy. They're tired of the crap, and they overprice they take huge discounts from you. You know what I mean? Their
Yep.
evaluate or what are their fees, I should say. They take a lot of fees from you. It seems a little bit more than most places, especially eBay. There's that listing fee, and now they're turning around and they're trying to clean up the platform. I heard that they dropped tons of sellers. They just dropped them. They canceled their accounts. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I've seen some of that, obviously, because I was probably a part of that, right? My issue was I was selling brand new with tags items, jerseys, I guess, brand new jerseys, which is against policy because it's supposed to be handmade, vintage, or I forget what the other one is. Obviously, I didn't follow policies, so I'm not a professional on what their policies are. But yeah, it seems like they don't like things too. Like even if you made a Mickey Mouse T-shirt and say Disney, they don't like that because Disney's knocking on their door and saying copyright. So they're kind of covering. I think they're trying to cover their own butt on a lot of stuff like that. But it's hard when they've let it slide for so long, and now all of a sudden they're trying to play cleanup because I think they did put a lot of money in this last year in promotion and trying to build their self up. But you're right. I think some of the higher dollar sales that I've ever got, there's more money, and there's definitely you can sell premium stuff over there that people will pay for.
Yeah, I know what I sold too. Actually, we went out a couple days ago, and it was a cast iron beaver on a log with some maple leaves, right?
Hmm.
And I got 185 for that plus $20 shipping. I was really happy with that. I think I had the same thing listed on eBay for 125, so that's quite a bit of markup. And it sold on Etsy first, like it didn't sell on eBay. But anyway, no. But I also like the fact that you're on different platforms because a lot of people think reselling is eBay. And reselling isn't eBay. Reselling is selling it however you want. You can sell it out of a store, out of an antique booth. You can sell it off Poshmark or Etsy. Or reselling is just buying stuff that's used and or doesn't even have to be used. It's like pre-owned. Like it can be new in the box. It can have newer tags, but somebody else bought it and didn't ever use it. It can still be that category, but it's just you're reselling something that somebody had purchased and now you're reselling it. It can be in the form of antique, it can be collectible, it can be new in the box shoes, like so I think a lot of people kind of just categorize it as if you're a reseller, you sell on eBay. eBay's a big machine. Like I love eBay, but there's other ways out there to sell. And I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you do see, especially when you start watching people who are selling like YouTube type resellers, like somebody like Shed Flips, like Candace and Lonnie. You never really seen them talk about anything except for eBay. Now they're talking about Macari, Etsy. I don't hear them talk about Depop, but I do hear them get Poshmark sales, and they're selling things that are outside of the realm of what would be normal. I think even locally, or they even started doing local pickups. So I think really, if what you want to do is resell, and you put everything you got, you just put in eBay. If eBay goes away or you get kicked off eBay, you're going to have to go to one of these other sites anyway if you want to continue to resell. So for me, I just like the idea of spreading it around everywhere. And if something happens, like something did happen with me, with Etsy with me, it's not the end of the world. As soon as Etsy went away, that's when I started thinking about, well, what's next? The next thing for me at that point was an antique booth, right? So there's always other opportunities. It just depends on how much effort you want to put in. I'm willing to put the time in, so that's never been an issue.
Yeah, and diversification in anything is a smarter way in my mind.
Yeah.
But they're even doing what I've been doing for years, right? And well, they've talked about the antique booth. That's how I started. It's 9 years as of Saturday, which is June 1st. I started 9 years ago. So they've hummed and hawed about it, but I don't think they're going to pull the bullet or pull the. I don't think they're going to do that one, right? But they are taking stuff to local auctions, and
Yeah.
I've been doing that for a long time, right? So I not able to take things there. I also buy things off of auctions, but and I think that helps. It keeps the inventory even and clean and clear. Not my situation, but mine's been built up for a while, so I got to keep going to clear it out, which I'm working hard at. But and I think there's a diversification in your selling platforms and in what you sell. And that's why I like to talk to you today about selling clothing, because that's something I've not really gotten into, but I'm really interested in it. Another thing I really want to get into that I'll need to learn is jewelry. Do you know anything about jewelry?
No, I've bought different pieces or even like baggies and stuff from Goodwill or from like the Wallace at thrift stores, just to go through them to see if I can make sense of it. But no, not really. I don't know too much about jewelry, but I'm something I wouldn't be afraid to like dabble in. I just haven't really had an opportunity to buy a bunch of jewelry before.
Yeah, I bought 100. I paid 100. It's kind of hard. Let's say I paid 120. I paid 130, but I had a couple items thrown into that because they had a whole table. They had 3 boxes of jewelry, and they wanted I don't know, what do you think, well, you're selling it, and I don't know, and I'm like, $100, how about 130, 150, she said. And I'm like, well, then you do know, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't know, then you don't know. But if you know, the 150, I'm like, no. I said, I'll do 120 or 125, something like that. I said, I'll bump it up 125. I said, but it's just pure volume is what my mind was thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything in there. I thought, okay, I'm going to learn. It looked like there should be a few pieces of gold in there, but I don't know, right? I didn't see any at the time. I just kind of glanced over it, but there was a lot of stuff. And she goes, 130. And I said, and then I had a couple things in my hand. And she said, you throw this in. I said, I'll do your 130. And she said, okay. So I did find a little bit of gold in there, and I should probably get $100 back in gold, just roughly in my mind. Could be a little bit more. I don't think it's going to be less, but I think I should get $100 in gold, right? So, and then there's some interesting pieces in there as well that I think I'll be able to put in the booth and get $15 to $25, and then there's going to be a lot of stuff in the booth like $5 to $10, right? So, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn on it. Like you said, you're not scared to buy it, to learn it, and that's what I'm going to do too. But okay, before we get into the clothing, I'm just going to read here. We got 2 comments. Randy is up here first. Nova Scotia Celt 5218. Good morning, guys. Jamie did a great job, as I knew he would. Now, Randy also listens to our Sunday show, and he would have saw you there for sure. eBay changed my life by getting me out of the dead-end job and making it possible to live on government pension. I agree with your comments on yard sales. A lot of people just bag the stuff up for garbage and save in our time. And save theirs in our time. Thanks for another great video. A lot of people just bag up the stuff for garbage. Yeah, so last week we had a show where we were talking about how eBay has changed the world, which also includes our own personal worlds. And looks like Randy's saying the same thing. So that's awesome. Changed my life, get me out of a dead-end job, make it possible a government pension. So that's awesome, Randy. And that helps too when you got a little bit of a income from different sources, like a pension or, maybe, I don't know, just different. I know Carl's retired, so he's getting something there too.
Yeah.
That helps for sure. But at the end of the day, he's able to leave that job early for this reason, right? So that's awesome. And people people should just bag the stuff up. Okay, so I'm kind of reading this wrong. A lot of people should just bag up, and I completely agree. That's what they should do. And we did make that comment as well, because it's like you're just wasting our time for sure. And that's what Randy's saying. So thanks, Randy, for the comment. Always good to hear Randy in the comments here, and see him on the Sunday show. Now we got a new Right Selections. That's I think that's going to be a new person, but they're quite comical here. Wait to hear this one. I'm only about 15 minutes in so far, so forgive me. So they were just 15 minutes into the show, and hashtag number 1, Carl sucks. He knows LMAO. So obviously I'm assuming they know who Carl is, and it's a bit of a little dig there back and forth. Number 2, I suppose to do the town-wide yard sale for my own town today, but it's been raining heavily and thunderstorming since about 6:30. That's kind of what we experienced. That would have been the same day this morning. So SOL. Yes. Well, Right Selections. I'll have to read this comment when Carl's on next week and see what he says. But anyway, thanks for the comment. I'm glad Carl sucks and not me, so that's good. And move right along. Okay, so thanks everyone for the comments. If you leave comments, there was none on the episode last week for the Spotify, but we got a good amount of views based on how small our channel is and how new it is. So awesome. And leave a comment and we will read it out next week. So all right, Jamie, let's get started. Anything you want to say before we get started on the topic today?
Nope, nothing in particular.
No? Okay. Clothing. And I think I'm going to put shoes in this as well, right? Like clothing and shoes. That's your forte. I'm going to just have a bunch of questions. Do you have like something you want to open up with, or do you want me to just ask away? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, you can just ask questions. I mean, the only thing I would say about clothing is just, it's the reason why it's such a successful thing to sell is because we're all wearing it. Like me and you are wearing it right now. Some people have really good taste in clothing. Some people just like me, I've got like a trashy band t-shirt on, and I've got, like a Hawaiian type shirt on. You guys can't see me because it's audio, but I'm not, even though I know a little bit about fashion for resale, I'm not a fashionable person. I'm dressing the same way as I did in high school, most likely. Right. So, but yeah, it's everybody wears clothing and everybody has a different taste. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about clothing, and I would constitute hats as part of clothing, on our next live show, we got to make sure we coordinate, because right now we're wearing the same hat.
Yeah, pretty close.
We got Toronto Blue Jays, the black and white logo on. I just noticed that now, so that's interesting. But okay, I'm going to a Blue Jays game Tuesday, actually next week.
Oh, really? I'm going to the Monday game against Orioles, right?
Orioles, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to the Monday one. Oh, Tuesday. That's hot dog day, so you get loony dogs.
Sweet.
Yeah,
perfect. So this is a digressive type show, but do you try to take a couple of days a week off? Like I try to take my Tuesdays off, and Steph and I try to do something. It doesn't always happen that way, but
I wish. I cram in as much as I can. I don't know. Even when we go on vacation, if I put my store in vacation mode, it's maybe at the beginning of the vacation. But then halfway through the vacation, I'll take it out of vacation mode, change my handling time, and I'll have drafts, and I'll be listing when I get up while my wife is sleeping. So I don't really take too much time off. And yeah, through the week, I'm probably still doing 7 days a week. I make time for myself. Like I do love baseball. So, I try to make those times where I can watch the baseball game. Me and my wife can have dinner together. We can still go out and do things. We go to concerts and stuff, but we sort of like halt our life to do the things that we want. But then we're both very active in our own businesses. So we do spend a lot of time, more an unhealthy amount of time, probably.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to have more free time. I still really love this so much that it doesn't really feel like work.
It does not feel like work for sure.
No. Yeah.
And if you want a break, you can go sit out in the sun, have a coffee for half an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You
Yep.
don't have to put up your hand and ask to go to the washroom, and then you're timed to get back within so much. Oh, what took you so long? What took you so long? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, that's factory work, right? So it's kind of nice that way. Yeah, I think Tuesdays so I say Tuesdays. Tuesdays we try to keep that day for ourselves. That doesn't mean we're putting a couple hours in the morning. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or whatever. We might clean items or price items, but we try to go to the movies or we try to go and do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But life is busy and sometimes that just doesn't work, right? So, I know I spent a couple of days making a fish pond. I should have been working here, but I was working. I was still kind of doing something, right? So, but it gets my mind off of something here, kind of refreshes the brain a little bit, and then you come back and do it. So, it's nice to kind of have that type of freedom for sure.
Yeah, and that way it can be a little bit passive because you're right. You can go cut the grass, still make a sale on eBay, come back and finish doing what you're doing. You're not by no means do I don't work like from the time I get up to the time I go to bed, but every day I'm definitely doing something in this business.
Good. Okay, so we'll get back to clothing here.
Yeah.
And clothing is something that I think is very interesting. And I'm going to digress a little bit from the sales part of it, and I'm just going on by what I hear, but I think a lot of clothing stores are starting to get away from the big mall type situation.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard where they're going to have little kiosks and you can go in there and you can kind of get your size and everything. Like you could try on samples, but at the end of the day, you're going to order them right there through the kiosk and then they'll just be shipped to your house. Did you ever hear that kind of stuff?
Doesn't surprise me because when you go into most malls, they're dead, right? Like besides, you go into a Walmart or something like that, it's a different story. People are flocking into those type of stores. But when you're talking about strip malls or like the conventional mall, like downtown in a city, they're not like they used to be for sure.
And the rent is crazy. By the time you pay rent, like and employees, they're like, how much are they really making? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
so hard to say, especially I don't know because some of these brand name clothing are like crazy prices too when you're buying brand new stuff.
So I mean, I know we're talking used clothing and that's new and stuff like that, but I think online is kind of there's no doubt it's the way of the future. It's not like an epiphany where I'm kind of spilling the beans or anything like this. I know we all understand that it's coming, but it's just it's nice that we're kind of in that beginning stages and kind of seeing it play out. Even though I know everyone's going to say, "Oh, eBay's been around for 20 years and you've only been on there for 3." It's like I get it, I know that, but to me, it's still kind of taken over since COVID. To be honest, in my mind, like it just kind of put everybody in that spin where we're going to go online and buy stuff, and now I think the world's comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there was a lot of fear. Like I can remember my parents being afraid to buy something on Amazon, so they would ask me to buy it for them. It's like, it's not. Amazon is certainly probably one of the safest places to buy things from. You could probably get scammed on something if you're buying from a third-party seller, but that's the thing about eBay and some of these other sites, because you could always buy stuff from like China for like super cheap, and I think it made people paranoid.
Yeah, well, I talked to this on the show with Carl, and I bought a tape dispenser. It's for your packaging tape, so it's a big, heavy dispenser, and the bag was all crap. Like it had bang around. It was in a box that was all beat up. It was presented like crap. It didn't present like new, and the where it kind of has the sharp teeth where the tape kind of gets ripped off. It was bent, and it never it never peeled off properly. You know what I mean? So I ended up ordering another one, and it came in horrible packaging again. Like it worked, it wasn't broken, but I mean, that I present my stuff well packaged, lots of, I probably overdo it sometimes, and I very rarely Frankenstein a box, but I really try to make it look presentable. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I just don't want it like in a beat up piece of crappy box with water stains on it. I try to make it look like a professional package, right? So and I package like my magazines go into sleeves, and even small little things will have their own little Ziploc bag in it. Sometimes I'll cut out a little cardboard backing, especially if it's a war medal or something like that. So I think presentation is huge. And I think if people just took their time and presented the stuff well when they buy it, I think we're going to have more buyers on eBay, So
Yeah.
anyway, kind of rambling on here. So what do you sell mostly? Like jackets, clothing, shirts, pants, hats, shoes, or kind of they're all about the same?
I would say t-shirts, running shoes, in sports jerseys would be the number. Like those would all probably be right around the same numbers going out. And then, things like jackets, sweaters, jeans or pants would all be mixed in there as well.
So when you say t-shirts, probably because of the logo that's on them?
I like to sell a lot of vintage t-shirt shirts. So like right now, Y2K is big. So anything from like 2000 to 2010 is going to demand pretty decent money. If it's like a cool logo, some sort of like sports team or something that maybe had like a championship year, or maybe even just like an older logo was a popular logo. Still 90s clothing is still very popular too. I'd say Y2K is maybe a little more popular. But time period stuff, you can go and find like new Nike or new brands like that, still sell them for okay money. But the ones that are going to demand more money are going to be the ones that are right now that are probably more trending with, like, I would say young adults who would be buying like Y2K stuff, or even somebody maybe in their 30s trying to buy back their youth from like 10 years ago or whatever, right?
Okay. And what kind of like price range are you looking at? Like, does it have to be like, oh, it's got to be at least $10 or $20 or $30 before you're interested?
Because I do source also at the Goodwill bins, it changes, right? Like I will pick up something that might sell for $20 because I'm only going to pay $1 or $2 for it. I think it's like an average shirt is probably like $1.50 or something like that from the bins. So if I know it's going to sell reasonably quick for $20, I would pick it up. If I was going to pick it up in a thrift store for $5, I probably want to see it be at least at the $30 to $40 mark before I'd really want to even spend $5 on it, because you're going to go through offers like everything else, and maybe after a while, if it doesn't sell, have to put it on sale and whatever. So you kind of got to be careful that there's still just enough margin there. But yeah, the Goodwill bins is sort of is an odd factor, right? If it's not available to you, you would pick up stuff like, for instance, American Eagle jeans would be something I would suggest that nobody pick up because they're not going to be worth a lot of money. But if I pick them up at the bins and sell them for $20, it's fine. I'm still making enough money that it's worth my time. So it really depends on how much you're buying stuff for, much like any other category. But yeah.
Okay. Any knock of them out of the park home run type sales, like stuff that just like, holy cripes, I can't believe I got that for that, for that value for that item?
Yeah, there's lots of t-shirts, like vintage rock and roll t-shirts or vintage hip hop t-shirts from like the 90s. Those type of things can be worth like, multiple $100s, like a couple $100 all the way up to thousands of dollars, depending on what it is. I think the most I've ever got for a t-shirt was like about $200. And it was like a rock t-shirt. But most vintage shirts, so like anything like 2000 and older, you're probably looking at $50 or more for most of them. So if you can find them, I would grab them. You always can look them up. There's going to be so many factors. Old t-shirts too are weird because sometimes condition doesn't matter. You obviously don't want it to be dry rotted, which basically means like you can like smell dry rot. It smells kind of sweet. And then if you take your fingers on like a seam and kind of pull, it'll tear just like it's paper. That would make any shirt worthless, like an old shirt. But if it's not like that and it's got a few stains or little holes, sometimes that just adds charm to those type of shirts. So, condition's not the biggest concern as long as there's no dry rot, which can be a problem.
So you can almost feel the dry rot, eh? Like it's almost like it's been overheated or something. Is that how you would explain it?
I don't know what creates it exactly. If it's just from being like exposed to moisture or like, I don't know why it breaks down like that, but you can definitely feel that it feels thin usually, but there's like this, once you smell it, you would know it doesn't smell bad or gross, but it has like this sort of like sweet kind of smell. It's just odd. And like, oh, that's no good. It's usually disappointing because you're like, if this shirt wasn't half rotted, it could be worth a couple $100, right? But
yeah, no, I've got into some dry rot type stuff, and it was old clothing, and it was from the attic, and it was so dry up there, and I just think it sat there for like 30 years in a dry, and it just you could feel it. It felt thin. It felt like it could rip very, it almost had like a soft yet sandpapery feel. Does that make sense? Like you could feel that it wasn't right. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I just so just you're advising to stay away from that no matter what it is, because like, could you disclose like dry rot? Like, is it something somebody would just frame or something anyways? Or
I'm sure I'm sure you could. I guess if you're going to go that far and it was worth something, you might consider just framing it yourself and like trying to just present it that way. I think it would be a tough sell though. Like, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm just curious. Okay. So hats, you sell a lot of hats. Didn't you buy a big volume of hats?
Yeah, I did. I bought like 200 and some odd pounds of hats for like I don't even remember. It was like $50 maybe. It wasn't that much anyway. It was probably less than that actually. Yeah, hats are interesting. Most hats are worth something, but like vintage hats, like for instance, if you could find like an 80s wrestling like WWE hat, it's going to be worth like a couple $100, right? If you find a vintage, some of the NASCAR ones that are like maybe from the 80s and 90s, some of those are good and some of those are just mediocre. Like a mediocre hat might be in the $30 range. A good hat could be a couple of $100. It really depends on what it is. It's like there has to be somebody, like everything, there has to be somebody out there who wants it. But the people collect all kinds of things, right? So whether it be like war memorabilia, sports memorabilia, maybe something that has to do with like CN rail stuff would be very popular, like train stuff. Yeah, so it's like any other category. It's collectible. And then some hats, just like vintage foam hats that have the foam inside, if the foam's in good condition, some of those can be very valuable. Even if it isn't like the best subject matter, it could just be a cool old hat that you can somebody sees value in.
Yeah, I put a lot of hats. I put some online and I've done okay. I've never really gotten like more than $60. It's always like between kind of your $35 to $60.
It's pretty average.
But I'll put them online. I'm putting a lot of them in the booth now, unless they're in absolutely mint condition with good subject matter. I'll throw them in there for $10, and I sell hats probably every week. A couple of hats for sure. If I put a bunch of new ones in there, I'll probably sell 5 to 10 within the first week, and then because I do put quite a bit, I probably got about 40 hats in my booth, and they don't take up any room. I just kind of set them up like I have a row of shelves, so I just kind of set them up there, so they're not really taking up any space, and so hats are definitely good. Have you put any hats in your booth?
Yeah, so I started off with just some hats that I had priced individually, and then after I got that giant hat buy, I actually wound up putting a bin in there and repriced Not some of the ones I had in there, but some of the ones that were sort of like mediocre, but people would want. I just have a bin that's $5 and people can dig through this hat. And I've been selling quite a few of them actually.
Yeah.
Like I've definitely just from people pulling $5 hats out of there. I'm that alone made me in the profit. And I've got hats here that I've already sold. I've got hats here that I still need to list. I have hats that I took to an auction. They haven't got auctioned off yet, but I had a lot of hats obviously. So but yeah, I'm okay with just $5 just to move them out because they're not great hats. They might be, baseball hats or maybe like superhero hats or more modern type of things that people might still like, but they don't hold huge amount of value.
Yeah. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm just waiting to see how this goes, but I'll probably put my $10 hats in a different booth and do what you did and put my $5 hats in a tote and just put them in my
Yeah,
smaller booth, right?
someone just digs through them and they
And they just
have fun doing it, right? Find
I
fun.
was bringing up a box of hats the other like last week, I think it was, and one guy followed me upstairs. He goes, "Oh, I saw you had some vintage hats." He goes, "I had to come and see what you got." Right. So,
Yeah.
and he ended up buying a couple that day. Right. So, hats are definitely good that way for sure. Um, this is what I love the booth, and this is why I say reselling just isn't eBay. There's other ways of doing it. And one thing I like about the booth, and I don't say that this is the only thing with the booth because I have big ticket items in the booth as well, right? I have 3 bigger booths. But if you want to make your rent and you want to do things, DVDs, hats, there's a lot of things out there that maybe aren't qualified for eBay just because we got shipping and we got a bunch of other,
Mm-hmm.
why are we listing $5 hats? Because we're only going to make maybe a buck or two at the most, and it's valuable time where we can throw them in the booth for $5. People love them, and like you said, it's already put you in the profits just selling hats for the month, right? So,
Yep.
right, so and then like that's what I love about the booth, and I think when people just kind of expand and expand their reselling outside of just eBay, and I love eBay. eBay's great. I dread the day and I don't want it to ever happen. But if I woke up one day and eBay's gone, it's gonna it's gonna hurt, but it's not gonna devastate things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
I'll
sure.
have to pivot, but I've already pivoted. You know what I mean? I've already expanded. So anyway, kind of digressing, um, but if you got some pretty cool shirts, like I bought some cereal, like there are Fruit Loops and Rice Krispie. They're 2 different shirts but they're only about $20 online, right? But I'll put 15. I'll probably put $20 and put them in the booth. I had gone to the bins. Only reason I've gone to the bins was because of you. But I was in London 2 different times, and I went to the bins. Well, I got this really cool St. Patty's shirt, or maybe the St. Patty's shirt. It was either from the bins or maybe it was from Goodwill in Tilsonburg. I think it was from the bins. But anyways, whenever I got it, I only paid a couple bucks for it. But St. Patty's Day was 2 or 3 days away. So by the time I put it online, it's going to be gone by the time really anybody sees it. And they're
Yeah.
definitely not going to get it even if they bought it that day. By the time they get it, it's going to pass. I threw it in the booth for $35 and it was gone within a day. It was
Perfect.
really good. Had St. Patty's Day. It was a hoodie, right? It was green. It's kind of vintage looking. Like I think it was probably from the probably 90s, and yeah, and it sold very quickly. So little things like that. I have a very limited experience, but I do have a couple stories like that, and I think the booth helps as well. So
Yeah. Well, selling clothing online, though, that's the same sort of thing you say with St. Patrick's Day. When something's going on, you can sell things for more money. Like right now, hockey jerseys, even if your hockey team's not in it, because the playoffs are going, hockey jerseys are selling really well for me right now online. And it'd be the same thing, if baseball playoffs were going on, or if there was a big golf tournament going on, the master stuff starts selling, right? Like those type of things definitely make a big difference when you're selling, right? Like what's going on is whatever's trending can definitely help your item sell.
um, so anything you want to talk about, like shirts or jackets, or do we want to move on to pants or? Okay,
Well,
let's do this. If you're going to measure shirts, how do you talk about the measurement? Because sizes from 1970 are different from today, and sizes from a shirt made in USA is going to be different from a shirt made in China. I
yeah.
right. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So if it's a vintage shirt, well, first of all, for all my clothing, especially shirts, I'll do a chest measurement, which is essentially just armpit to armpit. This is if you're laying it flat on the floor. So flat, completely laid out flat. So that's armpit to armpit, right? And then you're going to do the length, which is going to be from the top of the collar all the way down to the bottom of the shirt. So you're going to get chest and length. Those are probably the two most important. Sometimes people ask for like cuffs or like your sleeve. You can measure that, but if you only needed to do two, those would be the two that you would worry about. And then after, if somebody wanted to ask you a question, you can measure anything they wanted. But that's what you would do. You do the chest and the length, and you put that. There is a place in eBay where you can actually put the dimensions in. I just put them in my photos. So I take a photo of the chest measurement and a photo of the length measurement. And I don't normally put them actually in the listing. If it's something that clearly is labeled a large, but it's going to fit like a medium, I will put it as large fits like medium in either the description or the actual title, just so it's very clear, because you don't really want to return based off of that. And different platforms have different rules and how things can be returned. On eBay, if it doesn't fit, item not described, and they'll probably try to send it back no matter what, right?
Okay, so that is a topic I was going to talk about later on. So we'll get back to that, but I
Yeah.
agree. Um, so you're going to size that. That's the shirt. The jackets, I'm assuming, are the same way.
Yeah, I mean there's going to be some differences in jackets if they have like padded shoulders and stuff like that, but even then, for the most part, sometimes people want to know other things like, like on dress shirts, like collar size can matter and stuff like that to some people. But really, the basics though, without getting too complicated, is if you do that for any type of shirt, if you do the chest and the length, that's going to cover most bases. And then you can just wait. If somebody wants to know more information, they'll typically ask. You'll get asked way more times than you care to be asked about
Yeah,
questions like that for clothing anyway. But
yeah. Uh, well, that's the thing, right? Like, and that's what I think deters a lot of people is the returns and the questions, right?
yeah. And
And people,
the other thing that I think that a lot of people don't like about clothing is that there's a lot of counterfeit stuff out there too, and that's a huge huge problem, right? Like if you sell jerseys, you got to be careful because there are a ton of fakes, and most websites or most reselling sites don't like it if you put the word replica in there. Your item will get pulled for sure. But that goes with jerseys. There are a ton of fake shoes out there. Clothing brands, like there's so many fake Carhartts out there now. That's one of the big things people are faking. So you kind of got to know the warning signs for a lot of that. A lot of it has to do with stitching. You can tell if something's been like thrown together cheaply, or you can look to see if it's got a pattern. If the pattern doesn't line up in the stitching, you're pretty sure they're not going to do it factory like that out of like a good company anyway.
and
Shoes can be real tough too.
probably if you're buying a shirt or a Carhartt from like the 80s, like sometimes I understand that the older kind of distressed jackets can have can have the big value. Less likely those are going to be faked, right? Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Carhartt's one of the weird ones where if it's dirty and somebody splattered junk all over it, seems to sell even faster.
because
I
I
don't
have a
know.
Carhartt here and I know it's real. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to highly suspect that it's real, but it's new with tags,
Okay.
and I just know where I got it from, but I have to list it yet.
Okay. Does
But
it
it's a
have
jacket.
does it have embroidery on it or something? Or
It might have embroidery of. I'd have to go back and check. It might have the embroidery of the company,
yeah.
but I know who this guy worked for. He's passed away. They were selling off his thing, but his estate. But through some of the items, I know who he worked for, and it was a very reputable, large company. And they're buying Seiko watches as gifts,
Oh
and
yeah.
right, like they go all out. They're multi. multi-million-dollar corporation. Um, and he had a very nice house and clean, and you know what I mean. It's like it's not a fake situation. It's
Yep.
everything was pretty legit, high end stuff, right? So he was making very good money too. Um, so anyways, just kind of a little something there. Jeans. I've sold jeans before. I have you ever seen the one with the big M on the back? It looks like McDonald's M, but it's referred to as seagull. Like,
Yeah, I've never had those. I know I've seen them before though. Yeah.
yeah, I sold a pair. I think I got about $200 for it. It was a great big M on the back. It was basically brand new. I just put pre-owned. It appears not to have been worn. The M was like great condition,
Mhm.
and they gave me a 5-star review. They were very happy with it. Um, but I
Yeah,
mean, I've never seen one since. I'll look for
no.
them all the time now.
But you did the right thing. I always like the idea of like undersell your item, and then when they get it, and they're just thrilled at how nice it actually is, right?
Yeah,
I want to describe the flaws and show. I don't. You don't want to show unflattering pictures, but yeah, if I questioned whether it was maybe used or, you know what I mean, I'd just sell it as used, even if it had the tags on it. Sometimes, just because you're not going to have somebody complain about it so much.
yeah. Um, so any type of jeans to look out for, or pants, or clothing, or
Yeah, there are definitely brands out there that are worth more. I've had really good luck with right now. Once again, it has a lot more to do with the Y2K thing, but there's like some diesel jeans that were super popular in the early 2000s. Affliction, which they made jeans, and then is it Extreme Couture? There's whatever Randy Couture's clothing brand was. Those type of brands with the big like flashy backs and stuff do really well right now. But that's now I use that loosely because it's right now. Clothing trends change quite often. And if you're listening to this 6 months from now, those might be things that you wouldn't want to pick up. So that's something to keep in mind too, that things sometimes get trendy and hot and then they go away. So it's hard. There are like bread and butter brands for pants and stuff too, like, but they have more to do with like women's clothing, like Lululemon and stuff like that are like very expensive and that people will buy secondhand for decent money still.
so I think, and I'm just kind of going off memory here, so I could be wrong, but most of what I saw is you sell men's clothing.
Mostly, yeah. I mean, I'll pick up anything, but typically I pick up men's clothing. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's like some of it's more vintage clothing and band shirts and jerseys and stuff that not I don't have to like it to sell it, but it just is typically what I pick up because I kind of know a little bit more about it.
Okay. Um, didn't you buy a bunch of women's bathing suits once too?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, shoes and bathing suits. They were
How'd that work out?
good. They were brand new with tags. I paid $5 a piece. I've been selling them for about $30 Canadian online. A couple pairs for 25, with offers and stuff. Really good. And it's got the original price tag on it of I think they're from Costco originally. So they're not like Roots is a good brand still, but they're not super high end. They're just not available anymore. So I can kind of say whatever I want for them. And my price point's about $30. And they've been selling, which is funny because I know when I posted that video, I had somebody say like, "Oh, those were like $20 at Costco." I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe, but do they have them at Costco right now? No. So you're not going to get them. It's a nice bathing suit. That's the way things work. When they're out of stock somewhere, you're going to probably pay a little bit more money than they were originally because you can't just go back and buy them from the store.
Yeah, dude, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
right? Like that guy or person doesn't understand it. I mean, there's things that you buy with $1.99, but it's worth like $100 or something because it's a toy that somebody loves, right? Like it's
Yeah,
very common or something, right? So
for sure.
yeah, anything can be like that. Just inflation, Trudeau inflation alone, like drives the,
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
I can
Yeah,
only see that one more time. Next week, Carl's back. I can't talk about politics.
yeah.
So,
I think shoes is another really good one too, because some people are grossed out by the idea of wearing somebody's shoes. Okay. But then at the same time, if you want a pair of On Clouds, which is a very expensive brand, but you don't want to spend the money, you might consider looking for like an almost new or slightly used pair online for a fraction of the price, right? So you can get a really nice pair of shoes and not have to break the $100 price point to get them, right? Like, and for me, I'll sell shoes anywhere from like $20 up to $150, depending on what it is. And it's crazy how much people will spend on used shoes. But like older shoes, like old Nikes, those type of shoes can be worth good money. Um, in the older ones, you don't have to worry about so many fakes being made, but some of the newer ones, you do have to be careful. And eBay's actually has like authentication program where if it's over $100, you essentially ship the shoes to their authentication program. They authenticate them and then they ship them to the actual buyer, which in my opinion is a good thing because then somebody can't say item not as described and you're losing money on the shoes. So they're kind of protecting both seller and buyer there. I wouldn't really purposely sell fake shoes to anybody, but things can slip through even if you are a little more experienced.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a great thing for sure. And some people may complain about certain things, but I've said this quite a bit that at the end of the day, you want the buyer to be, to feel comfortable buying, right?
Yeah.
So any little step like that, like that's huge, right? So,
Yep. I think it's great.
um, okay. Anything you want to add before we get into another part of selling clothing? Like, did we miss anything? Like
I don't think so. I mean, it is like
styles or
styles.
anything?
It's like certain things can like be a trigger to something being worth money. Okay, so like if I see anything that's wool, it instantly is like, oh, this is probably not cheap. There's not very many cheap things that are made out of wool. So
Okay.
like fabric or material can definitely make a big impact. I'm trying to think of something else. Like if something's polyester, that's probably the cheapest material you can make something out of, right? The odd occasion something made out of polyester might be expensive, but usually not, right? So item material is going to have a factor in picking stuff up too when you're learning about clothing.
Okay. Cool. Um. All right. Well, we're almost getting to the hour mark, so I'm gonna. If you have anything to add in here, feel free. But I want to talk about the reason a lot of people don't get into clothing. A little bit is because of the comments, maybe the questions,
Mm-hmm.
but the fear of the return.
Yeah.
What do you think? What's your experiences there?
Well, I can tell you, I've about a month ago now on eBay, I actually just bit the bullet and turned on free returns, which is probably very unpopular, especially in Canada, to be honest. But my thought process is this, I suppose. Most people, so 99% of people who buy something online don't intend to return it. They buy it because they want it. Okay. That 1%, or maybe it's bigger than 1%, but let's just say that 1%, they're going to find a way to return it or get their money back no matter what if they're not happy. And there are ways to do it. And, I don't really like to talk about it too much because I feel like it just opens the door for more people to use those things to try to get
Sure.
stuff for free, right? So I don't like to necessarily go down that rabbit hole, but I think for the most part, people aren't buying things to return it. If you do your job at, presenting things properly, having measurements, showing flaws, because, if you're trying to hide flaws and somebody gets a shirt and it's got a hole in the armpit, I wouldn't like that either, right? So you got to treat people the way you would want to be treated. And I think you'll be fine. And you shouldn't really have to worry too much about returns.
Okay. How do you deal with returns? Do you get them to send it back? Like
Depends.
without? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends what it is. So on Poshmark, Poshmark pays for the return. You kind of get a slap on the hand that says, "Hey, maybe next time take better pictures," or it's unfortunate this didn't work out. They kind of give you a little dad speech, but they do that. So on Poshmark, if you get a return, not the end of the world. Also, Poshmark's rules on returns are much more strict. It can't just be because you don't like it, or if they say these don't fit, it's like, well, they're a size 8 men's shoe. It's listed as a size 8 men's shoe. You're keeping them, too bad. So Poshmark's very, very good about returns. So that's easy. On eBay, It's very loose. If somebody wants to, like I said, if somebody wants to return something, you can find a reason. And the most popular reason for anything is item not described, and it doesn't seem like eBay really makes somebody prove a whole lot, to be honest. So there's not much you can do about that. And like I said, I don't think people buy stuff with the intent to return it. So if I can get it returned to myself, if I can pay to get it returned and still make money, and it's worth returning, yes, I'll get it returned to myself. If I get it back and I'm like, I'm probably going to lose money or not make enough money, at that point, sometimes you just cut your losses and you say, you know what, I'm going to refund you the cost of the item, not the shipping, unless eBay forces you to refund the shipping, and you can keep it. If you don't like it, go donate it or cut it into rags, whatever you want to do. And sometimes you just have to, it's not, I don't think that's unique to just clothing, though. There's other items that I've done that with as well.
Now, do you experience a heavy amount of returns on clothing?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Rare, very rare. Yeah. I have one return right now, but it was because the person had they didn't put their apartment number.
Yeah.
Okay. So the address is wrong. So it wasn't anything wrong with the clothing. It was that they didn't put their address correct on Depop, I guess that was, and it's coming back to me. So yeah, rarely, not very often at all.
Okay, good. I think that's probably the most important question on returns, is not really how you handle it. How many do you have?
Yeah.
Because the kind of the I'm going to say, based on what you're saying, is it's incorrect, but kind of the feeling out there is that clothing, you get a lot of returns, but you're not experiencing that.
No, I'm not. But like I said, I'm taking measurements. I'm doing my best. Color is one thing that sometimes can be subjective, and you might say that this is purple, and somebody might get it and say, well, actually, I think it's more teal or something, right? It's like, well, so that there's so many variants that way. So color would be the one thing that's sometimes subjective, but everything else, if you, to the best of your ability, explain what it is, show the flaws, everything you could possibly show, for the most part, I've had no problems.
The measurements, the tags on the back, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like to show the tags, the size tags and material tag. Not everybody does that. I look at other people's listings, and sometimes it's just like the front of the shirt, back of the shirt, and that's it. But I usually like to show, I'll point out imperfections and put in the description. I don't write a big description. I'll just bullet point. It'll say minor flaw on right sleeve. See photos for details, and that's all I'll do. So
double stitch, single stitch.
Well, single stitch is probably going to be worth more money because it's going to be vintage. I don't always say if it's one or the other, but if it's a vintage shirt from the 90s, I might add in the description that it is single stitch because somebody might be looking for that keyword. But I don't think it's a necessary thing.
So you want the single stitch then for the vintage?
Yeah, well, yeah, they do make modern single stitch though. So just because it is doesn't necessarily mean that it's old, but it's a good indication. It'd be one of the things that would be like, oh, this probably is old.
So why did they move to double stitch? Do you know?
No, I don't know. Actually, I'm sure it's a quality thing, right? Just it's a little maybe more reinforced. I don't know if they had an issue with shirts coming undone or rolled, or no, I'm not sure. But okay. It seems to be. It was definitely popular in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
Did you ever get those 70s shorts that come right up to the crotch? And
I'm wearing some right now.
Don't stand up. Don't stand up.
Yeah, no. I haven't seen them. But I sometimes will buy the Levi 501s women's jeans that are cutoffs. So yeah. they're pretty revealing. Those always do sell really well. Oh, Levi's is still a great brand. Unfortunately, they've diversified into selling Walmart brand stuff and the Signature series, and so it's not all Levi's is worth a lot of money. But if you've ever been in a mall, which we've talked about, they're dying. If you ever went into an actual Levi's store, man, there's nothing in there under $100 for sure, and there's lots of things well over. They're expensive. It's expensive to buy quality jeans.
And the Daisy Dukes, eh? Is that was
yeah, that's basic.
The old Daisy Dukes.
Yeah.
All right. pretty much does it. We're getting to our hour mark here. Anything you want to add again just before we go?
Yeah, no, I just think if you wanted to resell clothing, I think you should give it a try. Like anything else, you're going to look up comps. You can start with things that you may, if you like, a certain genre of music, you can try to look for old country western shirts, old rock and roll shirts, those type of things you'll do really well on. As far as shoes go, there's so many different brands. It would take a long time to really figure out the ones that are going to sell for you. But it really, like everything else, it really depends what's available in your area too, right?
First tour of Taylor Swift t-shirt?
Yeah, I would think that would be pretty popular for sure.
I would think so. I don't know.
Yeah.
But cool. All righty. Well, thanks so much, Jamie, for filling in for Carl. We will have Carl here next week. I'm assuming he could be up in jail if he's knocking off those big leaves and penises.
Yeah.
But, hopefully not. Hopefully not. But Randy, give him that. Put that in his head. He seeded that little message. So we'll see if Carl followed up on it. So where can people see you again, Jamie?
Yeah, Thrift on Fire on YouTube, and actually on Facebook as well. And then A to Z Reseller Podcast available on YouTube and Spotify.
Okay. And you do that with your buddy John. He's also Canadian?
Yeah, he's out in Nova Scotia.
And he does a lot of clothing?
Very heavily Poshmark, eBay, clothing mostly. Yeah, he likes to do video games as well. I would say he's more passionate about video games, but where he lives, he has a lot of clothing available to him. So that's sort of what he adapted to.
Okay. I think I watched one of his shows, or maybe you were talking to him on a show. I don't know. It could have been the podcast. But I think he slips down into the U.S. He goes into like Boston or something and grabs clothing there too, right?
I don't know if he does, but I know his main thrift store he gets a lot of the surplus from the Boston area. So he'll end up with like a whole bunch of like Patriots or like Boston sports team stuff, and then Boston Marathon stuff like that. So he has access to a lot of stuff like that comes out of Boston for whatever reason. But I don't know if he actually goes across or not. If I was that close, I probably would. But
okay. And he does a lot of he does YouTube.
Yeah, he also has a YouTube channel. He does, I think, 2 videos a week. He'll do like sometimes an extra one. He does a lot of haul videos, so it shows what he picked up through the week, and then he shows what he sold. He's a very mathematical person. He loves numbers, so he does a really good job of breaking down. He tells you how much money he made on every single thing he sold. I don't do that because I'm way more dumb than he is. I don't break numbers down the same way, but I like watching his videos because he knows his numbers. And he knows them well.
And what's his channel?
Reselling with John.
Reselling with John. That's easy too. Okay. Well, Thrift on Fire. I like that. That's a great name. What made you come up with that name?
A combination of a couple things. So like when I was a teenager, when I played video games, I was always Jamie on Fire. That was my gamer tag, which was a play at the time on a Canadian band called Alexis on Fire. So it came kind of from the love of that band, but then that was my gamer tag forever. And then when I decided to do a YouTube channel, I'm like, well, I want to keep the on fire part, and then I threw thrift in front of it. So that's sort of how it came around.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's good. Awesome. All right. So anybody got a comment, leave it in the chats. We'll read it out next week. We do a show every Friday, and it's on both YouTube and Spotify, audio only. Even on YouTube, it's audio. But leave a comment either way about the show. I'm really happy with the way Spotify is working out. Like, we're such a small little, we just started in January, but the followers, we're starting to get a little bit of following. So hopefully that continues. Hit the subscriber or follow button on both platforms, whatever one you're on, and we'll see you every Friday. And thanks, Jamie, for coming on. And,
yeah, thanks. Anytime.
You're in the same area as me. We're both Norfolk County boys, so we do meet up every now and then. So thanks again, and Carl will be back next week, and we'll see everybody next week. Have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.